Steven Spielberg did not get into University of Southern California Film School, even though he wanted to. And he probably would have been a pretty good student, but he didn't get accepted because he only had a C average. So instead, he ended up going to Cal State at Long Beach, and where they don't teach filmmaking, and instead took a job at Universal Studios, where he got a part-time job as an editor. That's where he learned how to make film, and of course he did it on his own. For the most part, formal film school education is a waste of time, and most significantly, a waste of money. I will say, maybe if Steven Spielberg had gotten into USC, he would have made great films instead of the crap that he makes now. I don't think so. That's a joke. He makes pretty good films, but he didn't learn how to do it at USC. How many thousand students go through USC and never end up getting a job in the movie industry to begin with? That kind of education is a waste of time, and these days, a huge waste of money. I can tell you, I used to teach at Columbia. First of all, I went to Columbia Journalism School, which charged an arm and a leg in those days, nowhere near the $65,000 it charges today. I don't think I learned a thing there. I mean, I made a lot of nice friends and I got a lot of good connections. One thing I did get at Columbia was they had access to cameras. And in those days, we used big pneumatic cameras, these giant things you carried on your shoulder. And they had big decks connected to them with giant tapes this big, and each one shot 20 minutes. And the great thing about Columbia was everybody there wanted to be in newspapers. Nobody wanted to do television. It was considered low rent. So I was basically all alone, and I learned how to make films and television simply because I took the cameras out every day and shot and played around, and there was a great guy, there was an editor who taught me how to edit, so I learned on my own. This is the best way to learn how to do this. When I was at NYU, which also charged a pornographic amount of money, I used to tell my students to leave and get out because they were wasting their money. If you want to be a doctor, I understand you need a real education. You want to be a lawyer, you need a real education. You want to be an accountant, you want to be an investment banker. But if you want to be in the media business, communications major, media major, filmmaker, videographer, whatever it is, you don't need, I'm sorry to say, you don't need a $65,000 a year for 4 years education. What you do need is a couple of basic lessons and some basic experience. People are going bankrupt now because of the pornographic cost of school and education. So what we did was, what I think of the best thing to do was to simply launch an online film school, which we've done, which we can talk about. But more significantly, I really want to prove a point. And the point I want to prove is that I can teach anyone to make perfect films if you just give me 40 minutes. You give me 40 minutes, and I'm going to teach you all you need to know about making perfect films and videos every single time. After that, after the 40-minute lesson is over, it's all practice. And of course, the more you make, the better you're going to get. It's like somebody who wants to be a writer, you know, because I don't think there's any point in going to writing school to learn how to be a writer. The best way to... I'll tell you a great story. Many years ago, I was in the Himalayas when I was like 21 years old. I ended up in Kathmandu. And I had this dream of being a writer. As a kid. And so I bought myself a little Olivetti typewriter, these days before laptops. And I schlepped all the way to Kathmandu, overland across Asia, by the way. It took about a year. And when I got to Kathmandu, I got myself a room in the Kathmandu guest house. And I took out my little typewriter, and I thought, now I'm going to be a writer, right? I mean, it was very romantic. It was very dramatic. And I had read this book called The Snow Leopard by Peter Matheson, who's a terrific writer. And the first thing I did was I wrote like a 20-page letter to Peter Matheson. Dear Mr. Matheson, you don't know me, but I read your book, The Snow Leopard, and I'm sitting here in Kathmandu, kind of crap. And I want to be a writer, and I love your book. And I mailed it off to Peter Matheson from, miraculously, the Nepalese post office apparently got it there, because about 3 weeks later, I got back a letter from Matheson. It was a big envelope, and it was the letter that I had written him. And he wrote on the front of it in a red magic marker, he said, if you want to write, but don't write to me, signed Peter Matheson. That was the best advice I ever got to becoming a writer. So here's the best advice I have for anybody who wants to be a filmmaker, an auteur, a cinematographer, a director, whatever kind of crap you want to put on. It's about making product with a camera. If you want to do this, there's some very basic rules you have to learn. I will teach you those basic rules in just 40 minutes. That's all it takes. After that, like being a writer, it's practice. It's the more you write, the better you'll get. The more films you make, the better you'll get. But you do need the basic rules. And the basic rules are very simple. There's like a grammar to filmmaking that nobody bothers to teach you because, frankly, most of the people who teach at these film schools and journalism schools, they don't know what they're doing either. They're the product of being employees at CBS or NBC for 20 or 30 years. They lost their jobs, they retired, and now they just need a gig. So they end up teaching these really, really bad lessons. When we teach these things and when we do the 40-minute lecture, the very first thing I'm going to say to whoever gets in there, we got room for 40 people, is you have to forget everything you know or you think you know and just do exactly what I tell you to do. But trust me, if you do exactly what I tell you to do, you're going to make perfect films every single time. After that, like writing, it's practice. And you know what? Either you're talented or you're not, but the only way to find out is to do it. So we have a few spaces left at this thing. It's almost full now. It's going to be October 12th right here in our offices, 7 to 8 p.m. It's 40 minutes plus 20 minutes for questions. I think we'll have refreshments if I can talk Lisa into springing for the money. I hope so. And I will teach you in 40 minutes to be a perfect filmmaker every single time. After that, the future is in your hands. As Maimonides said, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Teach a person the 40-minute basic rule of making film and video, you could have a fantastic career. Or maybe not, that's up to you. But the least I can do is get you started. And that's it for today. Talk to you later.